Namaskar. Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar has said that climate change is not an overnight phenomenon and that it has taken the last 100 years to impact the environment. Historically, the United States is responsible for 25% of all emissions, Europe for 22%, China for 13%, India only has 3% of that. So India's historical as well as present contribution to greenhouse gas emissions is really very low. And India had committed to reduce emission intensity of GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030, of which it has already achieved 21% and is well on track, in fact, to achieve the rest in the next 10 years. So this is going to be in focus tonight. My name is Mark Lynn. Let's begin with the headlines. The centre reassures the farmers of addressing all their apprehensions in the new farm laws. The Union Agriculture Minister appeals to the farmers to come back to the negotiating table, cautions the farmers against allowing disruptive elements from misusing their platform. West Bengal Governor Jagdeep Dhankhar calls Thursday's attack on the convoy of the BJP President JP Nadda a slur on democracy, says that the Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee cannot depart from a constitutional duty. The centre summons the West Bengal Chief Secretary and the DG of Police. On the 5th anniversary of the Paris Climate Accord, the Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar says India is not historically responsible for climate change. Still, India is at the forefront in the implementation of climate goals agreed upon in Paris. India and Uzbekistan hold a virtual summit, a bilateral summit. Speaking at that summit, the Prime Minister says that both countries have the same concerns on terrorism, extremism and radicalism. Both countries signed 9 agreements and MOUs. India reiterates its position on the situation at the LAC. The Ministry of External Affairs says that the situation at the LAC is the result of actions on the Chinese side as they unilaterally tried to change the status quo. India registers consistent improvement in coronavirus situation. Daily new cases remain below 30,000 for the 5th straight day. Indigenous mRNA COVID vaccine developed by Pune-based firm gets the nod for human trials. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah pay rich tributes to the great Tamil poet and freedom fighter Subramanya Bharati. Addressing a virtual conference, the Prime Minister hails the great poet as a beacon of hope for humanity. Hope for a Brexit deal dampens ahead of Sunday's deadline as both sides remain adamant on their position. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission heads say no deal Brexit is the likeliest scenario. And in cricket, star batsman Rohit Sharma declared fit for the upcoming India-Australia Test Series. Sharma to fly to Australia for the December 14 Test match in the pink ball practice match. India and Pacers shine. They bowl out Australia for 108 runs, giving India a vital 86-run lead. And the West Bengal Governor Jagdeep Dhankhar has sent a report to the Union Home Ministry on the attack of the BJP President JP Nadda's cavalcade. Well, at the time, Nadda was on his way to Diamond Harbour, the parliamentary constituency of Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's nephew Abhishek Banerjee. And the report says that the security provided to Nadda and other BJP leaders was inadequate. The state's DGP and the Chief Secretary have now been summoned by the Union Home Ministry to discuss the deteriorating law and order in the state.
Politics in West Bengal continues to heat up after the attack on BJP President JP Nadda's convoy. The BJP has taken a very aggressive stance on this matter. The party staged protests and rallies not only in West Bengal but in different parts of the country. A day after the attack on BJP leaders on Friday, Governor Jagdeep Dhankar appeared before the media and questioned the functioning of Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Describing the attack on BJP leaders as unfortunate, he said that it is a black mark on democracy. The governor advised the Chief Minister not to play with fire and follow the constitution.
The events that happened yesterday are most unfortunate. They are a slur on our democratic fabric. They shame the largest democracy on earth. What is meant by this? ये बाहर का है. हम कहां जा रहे हैं? संविधान की आत्मा से हम कितना और भटकेंगे? संविधान की आत्मा पर हम और कितना कुठाराघात करेंगे? भारतवर्ष में ये बात करना कि भारतवर्ष का नागरिक कहां पर अंदरूनी है, कहां पर बाहरी है? मैडम चीफ मिनिस्टर, प्लीज डोंट प्ले विथ फायर ऑफ दिस नेचर. This is too dangerous to be acceptable by anyone who believes in Indian Constitution, who believes in rule of law. यदि अगर आप इस रास्ते से भटकती हैं, तो मेरे दायित्व की शुरुआत होती है.
Responding to the Union Home Ministry, Jagdish Dhankar sent his report on the attack on JP Nadda's cavalcade. It states that the security provided to Nadda and other BJP leaders was inadequate. The Union Home Ministry has summoned DGP and Chief Secretary of West Bengal on 14 December to discuss deteriorating law and order in the state. On Wednesday, TMC supporters pelted stones at JP Nadda's cavalcade. Several leaders were injured and the windows of the cars were also smashed. Leaders across party lines condemned the attack.
West Bengal सरकार ही माहौल ऐसा बना रही है और वेस्ट बंगाल सरकार ही ऐसे सारी हिंसा उनके नेता करा रहे हैं. ऐसा लोकतंत्र नहीं है ये. दिस इज नॉट डेमोक्रेसी.
अराजकता है, बिल्कुल लॉ एंड ऑर्डर है नहीं. और जिस तरीके से शासन और प्रशासन दोनों मिलकर लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की धज्जियां उड़ा रहे हैं, एक चिंतनीय विषय बंगाल के लिए.
बंगाल में आज से नहीं, पहले कई वर्षों से जो तानाशाही की सियासत चल रहे हैं, नड्डा जी का ऊपर यह हमला, ये तानाशाही की एक झलक है.
जिस तरह से भाजपा के नेताओं पर हमले हुए, वो राज्य की पुलिस की लापरवाही का नतीजा है और ऐसे महत्वपूर्ण लोगों के लिए सुरक्षा इंतजाम में चूक होना खतरनाक है.
Over the past few years, the state has seen a rise in incidents of political violence and lawlessness. Questions are being raised about Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee being hand in glove with the TMC in backing these acts of violence. With Kolkata Bureau, Sudhakar Das and Tapas Bhattacharya, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, the Prime Minister has made an appeal to the agitating farmers to come forward for further talks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that his cabinet colleagues have discussed in detail the new farm laws as well as the demands of the farmers, and he requested the farmers to listen to them. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar said that the government is waiting for the farmers to respond to its proposed amendments. The centre has renewed its appeal to the agitating farmers to come forward for talks. Union Minister for Agriculture has once again extended an invitation to the farmers to come and talk. The Prime Minister has asked the farmers to consider the offer extended by the Union Minister. The Prime Minister tweeted, "My two cabinet colleagues, Narendra Singh Tomar ji and Piyush Goyal ji, have discussed in detail the new farm laws and the demands of the farmers. Do listen." PM also shared the YouTube link on the issue. Meanwhile, Narendra Singh Tomar has once again said that the farmers must stop agitating and come forward for talks. He added that the government has come to know from the media that the farmers' unions have dismissed the centre's proposals for the new farm laws. He said that the government is ready for further talks with the farmers, but till now no proposal for the same has come forward.
मुझे लगता है रास्ता निकलेगा, मैं आशावान हूं और मैं आपके माध्यम से किसान यूनियंस के लोगों को कहना चाहता हूं, गतिरोध उन्हें तोड़ना चाहिए। सरकार ने आगे बढ़कर प्रस्ताव दिया है, सरकार ने उनकी जो मांगे हैं उनको समाधान करने के लिए प्रस्ताव उनके पास भेजा है और कोई भी कानून में जो प्रावधान पर आपत्ति होती है तो प्रावधान पर ही चर्चा होती है और जो आपत्ति उनके ध्यान में आई उन आपत्तियों को निराकरण करने की हमने कोशिश प्रस्ताव में की है और इसलिए उन्हें आंदोलन समाप्त करके और वार्ता का रास्ता अपनाना चाहिए। अगर कोई बात और भी करने की जरूरत है तो सरकार बात करेगी।
The government had sent a concrete list of proposals to the farmers' unions and appealed to them to stop the agitation. Union Agriculture Minister is still of the view that if there are still some points where the farmers want a redressal, the government is willing to make amendments.
भारत सरकार ने जो कानून बनाया बहुत सोच समझ के बनाया, विचार पूर्वक बनाया, किसानों के जीवन स्तर में बदलाव लाने के लिए बनाया, किसानों के साथ जो वर्षों से अन्याय हो रहा है उसको दूर करने के लिए बनाया, किसान बेहतर जिंदगी जी सकें, फायदे की खेती कर सकें, इस नियत से कानून बनाया है। लेकिन फिर भी हम ऐसा मानते हैं कि हम ही सर्वशक्तिमान नहीं है, यूनियंस के दिमाग में भी कोई बात हो सकती है, तो बात करके उसमें सुधार करने के लिए सरकार तैयार है।
Tomar further claimed that the new farm laws have been enacted solely for the benefit of the farmers. The laws have been made to ensure that the farmers lead a good life and engage in profitable production. He also raised the issue of separatist posters making their way into the agitation of the farmers and said that the same cannot be part of the protest concerning the agricultural laws and acts. He appealed to the farmers to keep themselves away from these matters.
जो ये फोटो छपा हुआ है, मैं इसको दिखाना चाहता हूँ आपको कि ये क्या प्रदर्शित करता है। किसान की मांग एमएसपी की हो सकती है, किसान की मांग एपीएमसी की हो सकती है, किसान की मांग एक्ट में प्रावधानों को लेकर हो सकती है, लेकिन ये किसान की डिमांड कहाँ से हो सकती है? अगर ये डिमांड और ये पोस्टरबाजी अगर वहाँ हो रही है तो मैं किसान यूनियन के नेताओं से कहना चाहता हूँ कि इससे बचना चाहिए और ये किसान आंदोलन को बिखेरने की कार्रवाई है।
Some posters made their way to the farmers' agitation space demanding release of people like Umar Khalid, Sharjeel Imam and others who are facing sedition and other serious charges relating to the northeast Delhi riots. The farmers are staying put on the border points of Delhi with neighbouring states and seem adamant that their demands of nullifying the three laws must be met. With winter chills set to envelope northern Indian plains, the hazards to the personal health of the farmers have only increased much more. Newsnight Desk, DD India. Well, the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar has said that India is not historically responsible for climate change, but is taking steps to reduce emissions as a responsible country. He was speaking on the eve of the 5th year of the Paris Climate Agreement. The minister said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the Global Climate Summit on Saturday on the 5th anniversary of the landmark Paris Climate Agreement.
Underlining that climate change is an important issue that needs the attention of world leaders, Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar said that India is walking the talk to save the planet. But it is high time that developed countries must also share the onus. Speaking on the eve of the completion of the 5 years of Paris Agreement, Union Minister said that over the years, India has taken significant steps towards fighting climate change, including increasing the green cover as well as renewed push for renewable energy installed capacity, which has increased by 226% in the last 5 years. At present, India is contributing only 6.8% of the global emissions and per capita emission is only 1.9 tons per capita. In comparison, the emission of the United States is 13.5% of the global emissions and per capita is 15.52 tons. China contributes to 30% to global emissions.
We are the few countries who are last column जो है, which is Paris Agreement compliant. यानी our actions lead to maximum temperature rise of 2 degrees to be achieved by 2100. India is the only G20 country to meet its commitment.
As part of its nationally determined contributions submitted under the Paris Agreement, India has taken quantitative climate change goal. First is the reduction in the emissions intensity of GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 level. Second is achieving about 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030. And third is creating an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने 15 अगस्त के दिन में लाल किले से ये बताया था कि 100 शहरों में आने वाले 4-5 साल में हवा के रुख में बदलाव लाएंगे, हवा के स्थिति में बदलाव लाएंगे। भारत स्टेज 6 में हमने प्रवेश किया है, तो उसका भी परिणाम है। इलेक्ट्रिक मोबिलिटी, हमारे आज लगभग 3 लाख वाहन इलेक्ट्रिकल हो गए हैं और ये निरंतर बढ़ते जाएंगे, यह हमें विश्वास है। उज्ज्वला योजना में 8 करोड़ से ज़्यादा गैस दिए हैं। ग्रीन हाईवेज मिशन में हज़ारों किलोमीटर के जो हाईवेज बन रहे हैं वो ग्रीन बनेंगे, ऐसी उस विभाग की योजना है। फिर नेशनल एडेप्टेशन फंड फॉर क्लाइमेट चेंज है, फिर नेशनल कूलिंग एक्शन प्लान है। हमने सबसे अच्छी तरीके से मॉन्ट्रियल प्रोटोकॉल को पालन किया है।
5 years after the Paris Agreement was signed, most governments are lagging far behind in implementing the deal. Annual greenhouse gas emissions hit a new high last year, and climate change impacts are intensifying. The Paris Agreement aims to hold the rise in average global temperatures. Taposh Bhattacharya's report, TD India.
Well, India is clearly Paris climate compliant, but many of the more developed countries are far from meeting their commitments. Environmental activists have decided to remind the 200 countries of their commitments, 200 countries that signed the Paris Climate Agreement. The 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, in fact, is regarded as one of the most path-breaking global agreements of modern times.
As India continues with its commitment to fight climate change and reduce carbon emissions, the world is looking towards other nations, particularly from developed bloc, that have virtually turned its back to the path-breaking agreement reached after intense negotiations in Paris in 2015. Laurent Fabius, the Frenchman who brought down the gavel to seal the Paris Accord on climate change 5 years ago, said he wished world powers had fought global warming as resolutely as they have confronted the novel coronavirus pandemic. The agreement between almost 200 states on December 12, 2015 was hailed as a potential turning point in efforts to contain climate change. It called for holding the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Fabius said that while the long-term trend in global temperatures is now downwards, progress is insufficient, blaming a lack of political will among many governments. Campaigners on Thursday unfurled a vast mocked-up poster in front of Eiffel Tower of French President Emmanuel Macron, turning his back on the planet in flames to press for more action on climate change 5 years on from the Paris Accord. Paris Agreement in flames, Macron looks away, read the caption under the poster, which laid out on an esplanade overlooking the Eiffel Tower. The agreement signed in Paris between almost 200 states was hailed as a potential turning point in efforts to contain global warming. But United States exited the deal. The campaigners say other states, including France, have failed to push hard enough to reduce carbon emissions. United States, the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter after China, formally exited the accord on November 4th, a day after Election Day, fulfilling a Trump promise to withdraw. The accord has brought some success. Scientific models had projected temperatures would increase 5 or 6 degrees before its passing, and now estimated rises of 3 to 4 degrees by 2100. US President-elect Joe Biden has promised to rejoin the accord. China has pledged to be carbon neutral by 2060 and Japan by 2050. The French government has also said it is committed to reducing carbon emissions and that it had a strong record of environmental initiatives. The threshold set by the Paris Accord reflects scientists' beliefs that a rise in temperatures of more than 2 degrees would doom the planet to a future of rising sea levels, catastrophic floods, droughts, storms and food, water shortages. Bureau Report, DD India.
So let's take a look at India's climate actions, and we'll first try and understand what the Paris climate goal was. It was to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees, in fact to preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels. So that is the goal, and India's historical carbon emissions are just 3%. India's current emissions are also 6.8%, and the per capita emission is just 1.9%. So India has 2.4% of the world's total area, the Earth's area, but 17% of the world's population. So that we can see is a dichotomy. But India has also got 16% of the world's cattle population and 4% of the world's fresh water, rainwater resources. We have preserved and enhanced our environment. Biodiversity, if we take a look, what have we done? 8% of the world's species, total forest cover and tree cover in our country is 24.56% of the geographical area. So that's a pretty good carbon sink. India only is the only G20 country in the world which is currently Paris target compliable or compatible. Okay, we are the only country that's compliant thus far. So the UNEP, which is the United Nations Environment Program, has said that India's per capita emissions are 60% lower than the global average. That's a pretty good certificate. India is clubbed with low emitters like Costa Rica, the Philippines, Bhutan, Ethiopia, Morocco, Gambia. And how we managed to do this? We have renewable energy installed capacity has increased by 226% in the last 5 years. And now it is over 89 gigawatts. That's what we have in renewable energy. Non-fossil sources in electricity generation, 37.9%. 366 million LED bulbs have been distributed under the Ujala scheme. Also, there's a reduction of 38.5 million tons of CO2 per year, and 0.28 million hybrid and electric vehicles have been supported. We're moving in that direction. We've leapfrogged from Bharat stage 4, which we had for a long time, moving past, we didn't even have stage 5, we just went directly to Bharat stage 6 for our electric vehicles. And Airports Authority also is implementing air navigation services. This is for reducing carbon footprint. So our airplanes also in the air are not going to be that many big emitters. Well, India's tree cover has increased by 15,000 square kilometers in 6 years. This is a significant increase. So all this is auguring well for India, and let's bring in our topic of discussion in focus tonight. Climate actions, India shows the way. Climate actions, India shows the way. And let me introduce you to our guests. Our guests are Dr. Ajay Mathur, is the Director General of TERI, and Professor C.K. Varshney is an environmentalist. Thanks very much for being with us, Dr. Mathur. So I have briefly explained some of the reasons why India is doing so well, but compared to the rest of the world, why is the rest of the world not doing so well is the question. What would you say?
There is a fundamental difference between the developed and the developing countries. The developed countries have high emissions because they have a lot of infrastructure that they've already built. In India, for example, you see electricity demand growing at about 5% a year. In other words, we add at least 5% more power stations to generate electricity. The great advantage for us now is that these new plants can be zero carbon. They can be renewables. And we have seen with the nearly 90 gigawatts of renewable capacity that has been added. For the developed countries, it means that they change over from their current high emitting plants to lower emitting plants in the future. We, therefore, at this point of time, have the possibility of either using high carbon dioxide emitting plants or low carbon dioxide emitting plants. And as you said, in the past few years, we have seen how prices have fallen. Today, solar electricity is the cheapest electricity you can get in the market when the sun is shining. And possibly 2 years from now, renewable electricity plus batteries will provide us round-the-clock electricity,
yes,
which is cheaper than others.
Right. Professor Varshney, you know, we've also been focusing on biodiversity, and how crucial is that, you know, in the mix of things? Because when we look at creating carbon sinks, we understand nature is really biodiversity, and we have a certain respect for nature here, and the fact that we have 8% of the world's species. How important is this in understanding our role, our future role in trying to achieve these Paris climate targets?
Actually, the biodiversity is very critical for maintaining the carbon balance of the earth. And as you have rightly said, that we have created and we are actively creating a larger and larger carbon sink. There has been some success with respect to our increasing the forest cover. But let me also make a little point that whatever we are doing is fine, but that is not enough. Okay. Unless the rest of the world also comes in, because it's a global problem. And we are just one of the partners of this entire system. And therefore, our doing will not only ensure biodiversity safety and its progress, unless the rest of the world also join in. And they are dragging their feet. And there is a problem that because of the COVID-19, a large number of dent has been made on the global economy. $15 trillion seems to have been lost. Yes. So the question is that people have to come with a great resolve and commitment to really attend to the problem of climate change, which is really creating a very serious situation. Let me tell you that 1.2 degree we have already really crossed since the industrial level, while the limited window that is left requires that our NDCs should be more aggressive. And it is at the Glasgow meeting, which is scheduled in November 2021, is going to be something where people are going to really look forward that how countries are really coming with greater commitment and greater resolve. And unless that happens, our effort is absolutely Paris climate conformity. But the question is that is not enough. What we need, that global temperature must come down. And that is a serious issue.
So definitely, Dr. Mathur, it requires, of course, the effort of every human being on the face of the planet to participate in this, to bring it down. I mean, it's a collective effort. And we've seen that perhaps the world had a wake-up call with COVID itself, because some analysts have said that COVID and other kind of diseases like this are likely to come into the human sphere from the animal world because of climate change. So what would you say? I mean, a sustainable lifestyle, is that slowly becoming a reality? COVID, in fact, has changed our lifestyle a little bit, probably for the better, helping us to be more compliant with nature.
You know, today, when we signed the Paris Agreement in 2015, there were no emissions at all for which zero carbon technologies existed which were cost effective. Today, something like 1/3 of the emissions that are from India, CO2 emissions, have cost-effective zero carbon technologies available. It's not that they're being implemented. There are financial challenges, there are institutional challenges, but we have those technologies. By 2030, it is our estimation that approximately 70 to 75% of the emissions that India has today would have cost-effective zero carbon options. This is a huge change. The short point that I'm making is that the evolution of technologies, the evolution of their prices, is what will be the determinant of how quickly we move towards these new technologies. And things like COVID, they accelerate the change because it means that we have to jettison the old and pick up the new.
Right. Okay. We can also see, Professor Varshney, that you know, we have to have, when we talk about sustainable development, it has to be, our GDP growth has to be climate compliant. And we are so moving in that direction, and technology is playing a significant role, as Dr. Mathur is saying. But the point is that technology comes at a cost. It's kind of expensive, and it has to be brought down. And this was the whole arguments of climate justice in the big climate debate about the rich countries having the technology and not being able to give it to the poor countries. But we see that the rich countries are the big emitters. Are they not even using the technology themselves?
They are not using the technology, and also they have got a legacy of carbon emission to which they must feel responsible and really come out very aggressively to cut down the carbon emission. The most important point that we have to realize is that it is the lifestyle which is really responsible. It is not that much. It is the consumerism. It is the excessive use of the resources. And the lifestyle has to be really looked at. Sustainable production and consumption is absolutely essential. The diets have to be looked at very carefully. The agriculture and the way that we do agriculture has to be looked at. It is a major component of carbon emission. So I think these are some of the things which the West has to look very carefully. The kind of industrial farming of the animals, as well as the other kind of intensive farming, is something which need to be looked at very carefully. And unless all these things, along with the new technologies about which we are really feeling very confident, they are alone not enough, but the lifestyle is the primary thing which need to be checked.
Right.
And I think
we seem to be short of time, so let's move on. Dr. Mathur, talking about lifestyle and, you know, the point that perhaps people's movements are important. We know that we've had several of them in our country. We've had we've had the Swachh Bharat campaign. We have, you know, various other campaigns as well. Clean air, Bharat Stage 6, Namami Gange, zero effect, zero defect, smart cities. All this, also now we have brought in a code for energy efficient buildings. All this is moving in the right direction and putting us, you know, where we should be as far as meeting those targets are concerned.
Well, the short point is that at the end of the day, it is the institutions to pick up those newer technologies which are zero carbon. How quickly can we pick up renewables, for example? How quickly can we pick up electric vehicles? How quickly can we pick up zero carbon technologies in industry? This means that obviously we manufacture them in India, the Atmanirbhar part, and ensure that they are, to the user, more cost effective. This is what is going to change his behavior once and for all.
Fine. A final word from you, Professor Varshney. It is, you know, despite all our good efforts, we still have some of the most polluted cities in the world and some of the most polluted water bodies. So this requires, you know, some more concerted effort.
Absolutely. And you know that the question of cyclones and others are all results not only of the Indian action, but it is also because of the global impact. And all these things are going to cost us very severely. The recent cyclone that we have faced in India-Bangladesh border, Amphan, has costed us about 14 billion. This is the tentative estimate by the global community made. So I think these are some of the things which really erode away the kind of progress that we intend to make. Because of this, it is important that the global community, we must really impress upon the global community to meet their commitment and to be more aggressive in terms of really cut down the global warming and the greenhouse gas emission, both looking into their lifestyle, the food habits, as well as their way of really relationship with the environment. These are absolutely essential.
Non-negotiable, absolutely non-negotiable for the world. Thanks very much, Dr. Mathur and Professor Varshney, for joining us and helping us understand a little more about the context in which India has achieved these targets, as on track to continue to achieve these targets by 2030. Moving on then to our next story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, They've held the India-Uzbekistan virtual bilateral summit, and discussions on the entire spectrum of the bilateral relationship, including the strengthening of cooperation in post-COVID world, were on the agenda. In his opening remarks, Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted the issue of terrorism. The Prime Minister said that both nations stand against terrorism. Let's listen.
उग्रवाद, कट्टरवाद तथा अलगाववाद के बारे में हमारी एक जैसी चिंताएं हैं। हम दोनों ही आतंकवाद के खिलाफ दृढ़ता से एक साथ खड़े हैं। क्षेत्रीय सुरक्षा के मुद्दों पर भी हमारा एक जैसा नजरिया है। हम सहमत हैं कि अफगानिस्तान में शांति की बहाली के लिए एक ऐसी प्रक्रिया आवश्यक है जो स्वयं अफगानिस्तान की अगुवाई, स्वामित्व और नियंत्रण में हो। पिछले 2 दशकों की उपलब्धियों को सुरक्षित रखना भी आवश्यक है।
Prime Minister also focused on the joint cooperation of both of the countries in COVID times.
महामारी के इस कठिन समय में दोनों देशों ने एक दूसरे को भरपूर सहयोग दिया है, चाहे दवाइयों की आपूर्ति के लिए हो या एक दूसरे के नागरिकों को सुरक्षित घर लौटाने के लिए। हमारे प्रदेशों के बीच भी सहयोग बढ़ रहा है। गुजरात और अंदीजों की सफल भागीदारी के मॉडल पर अब हरियाणा और फरगाना के बीच सहयोग की रूपरेखा बन रही है।
Prime Minister Modi further highlighted the bilateral relations on a wider canvas through joint working groups on infrastructure, IT and training sectors.
भारत और उज्बेकिस्तान ने मिलकर इंडिया सेंट्रल एशिया डायलॉग की पहल ली थी। इसकी शुरुआत पिछले वर्ष समरकंद से हुई थी। एक्सेलेंसी, पिछले कुछ वर्षों में हमारी आर्थिक साझेदारी भी मजबूत हुई है। हम उज्बेकिस्तान के साथ अपनी डेवलपमेंट पार्टनरशिप को भी और घनिष्ठ बनाना चाहते हैं। मुझे यह जानकर खुशी है कि भारतीय लाइन ऑफ क्रेडिट के अंतर्गत कई प्रोजेक्ट्स पर विचार किया जा रहा है। आपकी विकास प्राथमिकताओं के अनुसार हम भारत की एक्सपर्टाइज और एक्सपीरियंस साझा करने के लिए तैयार हैं। इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, आईटी, शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, ट्रेनिंग और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग जैसे क्षेत्रों में भारत में काफी काबिलियत है जो उज्बेकिस्तान के काम आ सकती है। हमारे बीच कृषि संबंध जॉइंट वर्किंग ग्रुप की स्थापना एक महत्वपूर्ण और सकारात्मक कदम है। इससे हम अपने कृषि व्यापार को बढ़ाने के अवसर खोज सकते हैं, जिससे दोनों देशों के किसानों को मदद मिलेगी।
Uzbekistan President Shavkat Mirziyoyev said that both countries stand firmly against terrorism. He added that modern India is emerging as a leading global power.
So we have been closely cooperating in the area of the fighting the common threats and challenges and standing up for the soonest peaceful settlement in Afghanistan. Modern India is one of the leading world powers with enormous economic and intellectual potential, and I do highly appreciate the achieved level of the open and constructive dialogue as well as comprehensive support on the part of Indian government.
India and Uzbekistan signed 9 agreements and MOUs coinciding with the virtual summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the President of Uzbekistan. These agreements pertain to cooperation in areas of solar energy, journalism and mass communication, cyber security, among others.
9 agreements and MOUs were signed coinciding with the summit today, and these basically pertain to cooperation in the areas of solar energy, journalism and mass communication, cyber security, community development projects, police training, information and communication technology, and standardization. Very importantly, the agreement on line of credit, which was extended by us in 2018, was signed for an amount of $448 million.
Both leaders strongly emphasized the need for concerted efforts. This is to increase bilateral trade and investment, and the officials have instructed fast-tracking the conclusion of the bilateral investment treaty and the preferential agreement in this regard. Also, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that the situation at the LAC, which occurred during the last 6 months, has been the result of actions of the Chinese side, which has sought the effect to unilaterally, in fact, change the status quo along the line of actual control. The MEA spokesperson, Anurag Srivastava, said that both sides need to strictly follow the various bilateral agreements and protocols in their entirety, including the 1993 and 1996 agreement on maintenance of peace and tranquility.
The situation that we have seen since the last 6 months has been the result of the actions of the Chinese side, which has sought to effect a unilateral change in status along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. These actions are in violation of the bilateral agreements and protocols on ensuring peace and tranquility along the LAC in the India-China border areas. The two sides have continued to maintain communication through diplomatic and military channels. It is our expectation that further discussions will help both sides to achieve an agreement on a mutually acceptable solution for ensuring complete disengagement in all friction points along the LAC in the western sector and for full restoration of peace and tranquility as early as possible.
And the MEA has also said that India has pursued an independent foreign policy based on national interest. India's relationship with each country of the world is independent of its relations with any third country.
PM had unequivocally outlined during his speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in June 2018 that India does not see the Indo-Pacific region as a strategy or as a club of limited members or as a grouping that seeks to dominate. It is not directed against any country. It stands for a free, inclusive and open region. India has always pursued an independent foreign policy based on its national interest. India's relationship with each country is independent of its relations with third countries.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the International Bharati Festival 2020 through a video conference. This festival is being organized by the Vanaville Cultural Center. It celebrates the 130th birth anniversary of Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati. And the Prime Minister congratulated the scholar C.D. Vishwanathan for receiving the Bharati Award this year. Praising Bharati, the Prime Minister said in a short life of 39 years, he had written so much and did so much and excelled in so much. His writings are a guiding light to us towards a glorious future.
I recently saw that his collected works have been published in 16 volumes. In short, life of 39 years. He wrote so much, did so much, and excelled in so much. His writings are a guiding light to us towards a glorious future.
Prime Minister said that Mahakavi Bharatiyar's teachings, they remind us of remaining united and committed to the empowerment of every single individual, especially the poor and the marginalized.
Mahakavi Bharatiyar understood that any society which is divided will not be able to succeed. At the same time, he wrote about the emptiness of political freedom, which does not address the social inequities and does not address social ills. His teachings are a strong reminder to us to remain united and committed to the empowerment of every single individual, especially the poor and marginalized.
Prime Minister said that Mahakavi Bharatiyar's definition of progress had envisioned a central role for women, a role that saw women as independent and empowered.
Mahakavi Bharatiyar's definition of progress had a central role for women. one of the most important vision was that of independent and empowered women. Mahakavi Bharati wrote that women should walk with their head held high while looking people in the eye. We are inspired by this vision and we are working to ensure women-led empowerment.
Union Home Minister Amit Shah also tweeted to offer tributes to Bharati. He said, and I quote, "My tributes to the great son of Mother India, Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati ji on his Jayanti, a pioneer for women's empowerment and an icon of national unity whose patriotic poems were a source of inspiration for the masses during India's struggle for freedom." Prime Minister Narendra Modi will deliver the inaugural address at FICCI's 93rd Annual General Meeting and Annual Convention. This is on the 12th of December at 11 o'clock. This will be via video conference. The Prime Minister will also inaugurate the virtual FICCI Annual Expo 2020. FICCI's annual convention is being held virtually on the 11th and 12th and the 14th of December 2020. The theme for this year's annual convention is Inspired India. And the event will see the participation of several ministers, bureaucrats, captains of industry, diplomats, international experts and other leading luminaries. So this convention will witness various stakeholders deliberating on the complications, the implications of COVID-19 and the economy, reforms being undertaken by the government and the way forward for the Indian economy. India's total active caseload has dropped to 3.63 lakh, its lowest since the 18th of July 2020. That's about 146 days ago. So the sustained decreasing trend in active cases has put India's present active caseload at just 3.71% of the total positive cases in the country since the beginning of the virus.
India's war against COVID-19 continues, and with the efforts of the central and state governments, the situation is getting better day by day. The number of active cases in the country continues to decline. India's total active caseload has significantly dropped to 3.63 lakh. This is the lowest in 146 days. The total active cases were 3,58,692 on 18 July. The country has reported a trend of sustained decrease in the number of active cases. India's present active caseload consists of just 3.71% of India's total positive cases. 37,528 cases recovered and discharged in the last 24 hours. This has led to a net decline of 8,544 from the total active caseload. India has registered less than 30,000 daily new cases in the last 24 hours. The number of daily new cases in the last 24 hours is 29,398. The total recovered cases are nearing 93 lakh. The gap between recovered cases and active cases, that is steadily increasing, has crossed 89 lakh and presently stands at 89 lakh 27,085. The difference in the new recoveries outnumbering new cases has also improved the recovery rate to 94.84%. 79.90% of the new recovered cases are observed to be concentrated in 10 states and union territories. As far as vaccine for COVID-19 is concerned, India's first indigenous mRNA vaccine candidate has received approval from the Indian drug regulators to initiate phase 1/2 human clinical trial. The novel mRNA vaccine candidate HGCO19 has been developed by Genova Pune and supported with seed grant under the IND-CEPI mission of Department of Biotechnology. Meanwhile, another indigenous vaccine, which is being developed by ICMR and Bharat Biotech, is undergoing trials at Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, Aligarh Muslim University. The first dose of the third phase in the trial was given to 1,000 people in a record time of 12 days.
ICMR और भारत बायोटेक ने मिल के ये वैक्सीन डिज़ाइन की है और उसका प्रोडक्शन शुरू किया है और जो इसका ये था कि 1000 वॉलंटियर्स हम लोग को सिलेक्ट करने हैं। तो ये काम हम लोगों ने विद इन 12 डेज़ जो रिकॉर्ड टाइम में पूरा कर दिया। फर्स्ट फेज़ हम लोग का कंप्लीट हो गया है। अब नेक्स्ट फेज़ हमारा 18 जनवरी से 18 दिसंबर से शुरू होगा। तो एमयू फर्स्ट इंस्टीट्यूशन था जिसने ये पूरा 10 दिन में कंप्लीट करके डाटा जो है ICMR को भेज दिया है और वो डाटा एनालाइज करेंगे उसका और जो भी इसकी एफिकेसी आएगी वो हम लोग को मालूम चलेगी बाद में।
AMU has now become the first educational institution in the country to have completed this test and sent its data to ICMR. Now, ICMR will analyze this data and test the efficacy of this vaccine. So far, 3 vaccine developers have sought emergency use approval. The Prime Minister himself has also said that the vaccine is now just a few weeks away. With Nitendu Singh and Tapas Bhattacharya, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, the US President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris were jointly named Time Magazine's 2020 Person of the Year on Thursday, chosen from a list of finalists that included the man Biden had vanquished at the polls, President Donald Trump. The Democratic former vice president and his running mate, a California senator whose election broke gender and racial barriers together, offered restoration and renewal in a single ticket, Time said in a profile of the pair. Cuba announced that it would start its long-awaited monetary reform in January, eliminating its dual currency and also the labyrinthine, that's the complex multiple exchange rate system that it has in a bid to improve business conditions in a crisis-stricken economy. President Miguel Diaz-Canel said the Cuban peso would be fixed at a single exchange rate of 24 per dollar in the first devaluation of the peso since the country's 1959 revolution. More than 3 decades, in fact, 2 currencies have circulated in Cuba's state-run economy, the peso and the convertible peso, which is pegged to the dollar. Located 65 kilometers below Seoul and boasting temperatures which are frostier than the Antarctic winter, the Korean Superfreeze Inc.'s facility would be the best, perhaps only place in South Korea suitable for bulk storage of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. The warehouses, which use electricity, would have difficulty maintaining the minus 70 degrees Celsius required by the vaccine for storage and carry the risk of the temperature rising during a power blackout. Walt Disney Company has announced a raft of new Star Wars content for movie theaters and its streaming service, including a feature film from Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins. The entertainment company detailed 10 new TV shows based on favorite characters from the sci-fi saga, including smuggler Lando Calrissian and droids C-3PO, beg your pardon, and R2-D2. So the announcement at the Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy made that announcement, and it came during the presentation for the investors and follows, in fact, the success of Star Wars' hit spin-off series, which is The Mandalorian on Disney Plus since November 2019. The news of the award-winning Korean filmmaker Kim Ki-duk's death sent a shockwave through the world of cinema, because he's known for making thrillers, and his films might have taken quite a few people by surprise and pushed them out of their seats because of the kind of movies that he did.
59-year-old maverick Korean filmmaker Kim Ki-duk, popular for Morbus, Peta, 3 Iron and Amen movies, passed away after contracting COVID-19 in Latvia. Kim Ki-duk, one of the finest Korean movie directors with over 20 movies to his credit, was in the country to buy property there. He had arrived in Latvia on November 20th. Kim Ki-duk has a large fan following in India, especially in Kerala, where his movies are regularly screened at film festivals. Born on December 20th, 1960 in North Gyeongsang province of South Korea, Kim Ki-duk had studied fine arts in France from 1990 to 1993 before returning to South Korea. He made his directorial debut with Crocodile in 1996. Kim Ki-duk was catapulted to international recognition with The Isle, which was screened at the Toronto International Film Festival. The filmmaker received several awards at major film festivals, including award for the Best Director at the 61st Venice International Film Festival for 3 Iron and Uncertain Regard Prize at the 2011 Cannes Film Festival for Arirang. His 2004 movie Spring, Summer, Fall and Winter is featured among the renowned movie critic Roger Ebert's list of great movies. Bureau Report, TD India.
Well, Britain is likely to leave the European Union. And Britain is likely to leave the European Union without a trade deal. In just under 3 weeks' time, Britain quit the EU in January but remains an informal member until December 31, the end of the transition period during which it has remained in the EU single market and customs union. UK and EU have given negotiators until Sunday evening to break the impasse at talks that are deadlocked over fishing rights, as well as the EU demands for Britain to face consequences if in the future it diverges from the bloc's rules.
Unfortunately, at the moment, as you know, there are two key things where we just can't seem to make progress, and that's this kind of ratchet clause they've got in to keep the UK locked in to whatever they want to do in terms of legislation, which obviously doesn't work. And then there's the whole issue of fish, where we've got to be able to take back control of our waters. So there's a way to go.
Well, the senior Indian batsman Rohit Sharma has cleared an eagerly watched fitness test at the National Cricket Academy in Bengaluru and is expected to leave for Australia on December 14. Rohit had sustained a hamstring injury during the IPL, which led to him missing the white ball leg of the ongoing tour. He's also out of reckoning for the first 2 tests, but can now be there for the last 2 games. As per the Australian government's rules, the star batsman will have to undergo a mandatory 14 days of hard quarantine before being able to train for the last 2 tests in Sydney and Brisbane. Well, glaze ice paralyzed on Thursday Ukraine's capital of Kiev, causing over 100 car accidents, according to the local police. A CCTV video released by the company, whose office is located in Andrivsky Descent, showed people sliding on their feet, struggling to walk downhill. Over 4,000 sweepers were deployed to remove the ice from the city streets. But with such slippery conditions, it was difficult to walk straight. Take a look. Some of the unusual hazards of winter, but we're still in COVID times, and one must always remember that the best way to keep yourself safe is to wear a mask and keep social distance and keep washing your hands. So it's a simple task, just wear a mask. Mask Up India.